Hi everyone, Alon Litz here, the CEO of October Health. We're here for Pressure Point. Really excited to have Stavs with us. Super excited for this discussion. At October Health, a big focus is how we can help you get in the right mindset to optimize your performance. And that is everything that Steve thinks about, everything that he does, and everything that he talks about. So no better person to join us here today. Steve, thanks for coming here.
Yeah, real privilege. Thanks, Alon.
So maybe just to set the scene a bit, can you share with our listeners, with our audience, a bit more about what you do, how you work with corporates, how you work with individuals, and then we'll go forward from there.
Cool. Well, let me start with a story, because I think that's where the business made its drive, which is what I founded 3.5 years ago. Is a lot of execs used to come to me in my practice. I've been in medicine 25 years as a doctor of Chinese medicine. And they just said to me, look, we need a different model. Because we normally come here when we're sick, or we've got disease, or we've got a diagnosis. And so is there a way that we can prevent disease, and optimize our performance? And I said, look, I'm sure. And really, it's about functional medicine. So I did say functional medicine 17 years ago, where you look at the root cause of disease. But people are coming now within the corporate environment, as well as executives and anyone out there who really wants to look at their health before they get sick. It's like servicing your car. You're doing these audits, physical, mental, emotional audits. And then from that aspect, you're able to put a diagnosis on there so that you can put a bespoke plan. And sometimes the diagnosis is, well, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, or I'm not sleeping well, or, my physical performance, in the training room is not as good as it should be, or my mental performance is not good. So we do things like cognoscopies, where we measure your mental health and your mental performance, and we use a lot of data points. And the whole point of Matrix Drive is to make it a data-centric and a human capital model. And so I can unpack that, but it really started with people coming to say, listen, we're losing the war against chronic disease. We really are. How can we prevent it, before actually we get the diagnosis?
Yeah, I think that's so powerful, right? And I think one of the benefits of the world today is that these things are becoming more accessible for the first time, right? It's not that you've got to go to a specialized lab in New York and, wait for 3 years to get there.
Sure.
These are technologies or interventions that are far more accessible. And the data's there as well, if we know what to look for and how to use it. And this trend away from reactive to preventative, I think, is critical, right? Why should we sit there and wait for things to go wrong?
Yeah.
How can we reduce the likelihood of those things happening and equip ourselves to be better prepared to handle those situations as well when things don't go according to plan? So
sure. And we do get people who have a diagnosis like adrenal burnout or brain fog. They do come to us and they say, listen, I've tried the traditional way, and we try and empower them with their own data. We really believe in educating people so they've got the data themselves. Not that they're going to become doctors, but really look at the things that they can use as wearable technology as well, and some blood tests that's not too complicated, so that they can make the necessary adjustments. And, I've really just defined what biohacking is, and this term that people don't really understand. It's really the art and science of assessing your internal environment, which is your body, and your external environment where you work, live, and move, and then making the necessary changes in order to optimize your physical, mental, and emotional health and well-being. So that's what biohacking is. And you do have to hack, because big food, and we know what big food's like, they're not benevolent organizations. They don't want you to thrive really necessarily. They, fulfilling shareholders' needs. And so it's difficult to get healthy foods out there. So you do have to hack the system. As brilliant as pharmaceuticals are, and they have their place, I don't want my patients or my clients to take a pharmaceutical drug forever without having the roadmap to try and say, listen, what can I do that's of ancestral wisdom or what's natural that can really help myself without having to take these pharmaceuticals? And I'm not anti-Western medicine at all. It has its place. But I really want to prevent people from getting a chronic disease. And in that way, we can lessen the load on society, especially the health load, where it's chronic disease in America or here. It's just like crazy, the numbers. I mean, 50% of Americans have one chronic disease, and I think 33% have more than one chronic disease. So
it's crazy.
We don't have the doctors, as brilliant as our doctors are. We don't have the doctors or the medical facilities to actually service all the people with disease.
Yeah, I think if we try and solve the same old problems in the same ways, we're just getting the same old problems, right? So we do need these new innovative approaches. So, let's get practical, right?
Yeah.
Let's assume, I rock up I'm an exec. I'm sure this is a story that you hear. I'm working too hard, no time to train, very little time to eat, on the road a lot. Probably not eating as well as I should be, right? Because you're traveling. Probably also means boozy dinners that come with it. So, I mean, what do you do with someone like that who walks into your door?
Yeah, look, I think the big thing that we do, we've worked with big corporates like ABSA and Standard Bank and Bidvest, and these corporates have come to us with their executives and their leaders to say, listen, the traditional model isn't servicing us well. People are having to take long leave. I mean, you're in the mental health space. You can just see what's happening to people with burnout. Or they got a thing called presenteeism, which they come to work, they're present, but they're not there emotionally and mentally, which is costing I think 100,000 Rand per year per employee.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is huge. And I think you could tell me about the data there. But really, they would go through an auditing process, depending on how long that journey is. We would then pick up any red flags, orange flags, and then obviously tell them the good things, because people are like, oh my goodness, I don't want to do the audit because I'm just not sure what information I'm going to get back. So there is this bit of fear factor. But my view is you only can sort of manage what you can measure. And, it's the Peter Drucker quote, that if people don't know, they're oblivious to it. And then people get a chronic disease or diagnosis of a heart attack, and they're like, I can't believe that happened to me. What happened? But there were red flags there if you just looked under the hood. And so they would go through an auditing process, and the corporates that have come to us have said, listen, here's the executives. We want you to take them through this auditing process. We want to see about their sleep, their stress. We want to see what their labs are like, their blood tests are like, possibly inflammatory markers, heavy metal testing. I mean, the list can go on, depends on really how long the journey is and how much finances you've got. But from hair tissue mineral analysis to urine testing to stool testing to genetic testing.
Really, everything.
It can be everything.
Yeah.
But we start with the small, and we want to say to people, this is possible. And if someone's listening out there, this is possible for almost everyone. As simple as just getting a pedometer, just measuring your steps a day. You can just start there. And if you go from 4,000 steps to 8,000 steps, you improve your risk from dying from all causes by 52%.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So it doesn't have to be complicated.
And that's accessible for everyone, right?
Yeah, it's so important. You get a 500 Rand.
Yeah.
And obviously the technology and the wearable technology is improved. So you can go to your top of your top. But it can be as just get 8,000 steps. And sometimes that's the one thing that people need to do. So we want to make it easy, get sunlight. How much sunlight do you need? So some of the stuff is free. It's just people just not aware in terms of what they need to do. And we've broken a lot of ancestral practices that's caused a lot of significant disease for us. So it's number one, auditing. Number two, it becomes bespoke or unique, personalized. Like we just discussed line now, your HRV was different to my HRV. People don't even know what heart rate variability is, but it's very unique and bespoke to you. Yeah. And that's the way we want to make it. I mean, tech's there now, the technologies, and as brilliant as Discovery Vitality is growing, it's helping people look at the data, make it measurable, and it's personalized. And I know there's a love-hate relationships with health professionals and Discovery, but they're doing incredible things worldwide. They're making people aware, and then they're rewarding people for the healthy things they do. Now, I don't agree with all their metrics, but at least they're making it measurable and rewarding people. So I think we need to do that. And I think it's really, really important that people have a data-centric model. So if you're listening out there and you don't know your data, and you don't know your sleep data, or you don't know your step data, or you don't know your bloods, you need to look at this in earnest. And you need to look at it with someone, and I give this analogy along, which is really important, is that medical doctors in our country are incredible. Specialists are incredible, but they've been trained skillfully to treat disease. And they look at it and say, okay, on this range, you don't have a disease. But we don't look at it like that at Mantis Rive and functional medicine doctors. We want to look at it and say, what is optimal? Typical examples, vitamin D is we don't want you at 31, which is the bottom of the range, NGs per ml. We want you at 60, because 60 is going to help your bone density, it's going to help your immune, it's going to help your sleep, it's going to help your well-being. So people got to understand, listening out there, but I went to my doctor and checked my vitamin D and I checked my red cell magnesium and he says it's fine. The eye that looks at that is crucially important to make sure it's about optimal health and not just normal health. I mean, the numbers
want to tick a box that you're within range, right? Yeah.
And I mean, people are just sick out there. So the sample groups, even like a liver enzyme like GGT, which is gamma glutamyl transferase, the numbers have changed 40 years ago. So like what was considered normal then was never considered, or it's considered normal now. So it's like things have changed because people are sicker out there. And that's not good. And like people might say to you, like they're listening saying, oh, but I don't do data. And I say to people, have you stood on a scale before? Oh, yes. That's a data point. That's measurable. You can make those changes. Have you measured your blood pressure? Oh, well, there's no doctors that are going to dispute now that how important a good, healthy blood pressure is with regards to your health and wellness. So people are biohackers, and some of them have got these wearable technologies, you spoke about it, like blood pressure cuffs at home, like scales, even doing body composition and those things. And it's becoming more accessible to the average person.
Okay, that's clear. And I think that's something which hopefully everyone can think about in their day-to-day. And, the depth that you can go into, I think, might differ per individual. But we kind of look at areas of life. What areas once we get the data, right, what areas of life do you support individuals with? What areas can people just think about if they're listening or they're watching? Like, what should they think about changing? You spoke about steps, right? And again, that's something that people can take back and do. Spoke about sunlight.
Yeah.
What are some other areas that individuals should focus on?
I think one of the biggest things that we've seen like move the needle the most is sleep, and just the wearable technology that people can look at their sleep. And I think getting like REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, which is so important for cognitive performance. Like a lot of my corporates and leaders and execs, they don't know what their rapid eye movement sleep is. And that's very important for memory consolidation and dealing with distress in the day and just forming, thinking patterns and processing and analytical patterns, REM sleep. And then deep sleep is often for your recovery. So are you recovering from the day, from the training, from the distress that you've gone through physically, mentally, emotionally? So that's a huge area that we find that teenagers are breaking sort of sleep routines and sleep patterns, and it's causing a lot of problems. It's causing a lot of emotional distress and ill health in depression and anxiety, because unfortunately we've now got technology and we've got this incredible power grid, or not so incredible in South Africa, but what it does is it helps the technology. So you're working late and you've got all these lights and you've got all these devices and you've got all the stimulation, but it's damaging to our sleep. And sleep is this regenerative time that we do, and it's this lymphatic system that washes like this brainwash and deals with proteins and toxins, and I can get into the nitty-gritty if we want to. But it's so important from a rejuvenation and restorative perspective. And I think it's one of the areas in life that we've broken the most. Whether you're a CEO or a teenager or mom who's got kids and parents and, caught in the sandwich generation, is if we don't look after our sleep and analyze that sleep and then put some action plans. Some are free, some going to cost, but we spoke about what alcohol does to sleep, or eating late. And some of the stuff is just changing, not the what, but the when. And the when as a lever is as important often as the what. So I would say sleep is the next thing that we really want to measure and then make changes to and optimize. And people don't really have a good idea in terms of what type of sleep architecture they have.
Yeah. Well, again, let's look at that sleep example. Like, your starting point is measuring, right? Where do people start measuring? Now, how do you measure your sleep? Like, what's a practical step that people can do? What are some tools that you use to measure sleep? I think, the audience will find that really valuable.
No, and there's a lot of wearable technology out there like Garmin and Apple. There's the Oura Ring that I've used and I use with my clients. I'm currently using Whoop. The executives do well with Whoop just because we can bring it easily and we can procure it easily. There's been a problem with Oura bringing in, but we'll work with someone with Garmin as long as they can wear it consistently. And that's the problem we have.
It's about that baseline and then the ongoing tracking, right? What helps you?
Like with the Apple Watch, we find that people don't wear it as much. The Garmin Watch, they don't wear it as much. So if you don't wear it, then we can't look at trends. And it's less about accuracy, about precision. Precision is making the same error. And like if you've got a dartboard, it's like it makes the same error, so it's hitting the same error. Accuracy is hitting the bull's eye. So a lot of these devices are very precise. They might not be accurate like a sleep study would be, but they set trends for you, which is very, very important. And I also find that we like the Whoop because people have to, after 12 months, they have to pay a subscription. And when you pay for something, you're more likely to get invested and involved because you've got skin in the game. To look at the data, where some people have got an Apple Watch, they're like, say, what's happened to your REM sleep over the last 6 months? And they're like, no, I don't know, Steve. What's happened to your heart rate variability over the last 3 months when you had that like distressful event or traumatic event with your family? I'm not sure. Because when you're not invested in it and you make a one-time purchase, unless you're like a true biohacker and a data-centric person, you often don't even look at it,
Yeah, I mean, I know when I had my workout, every day I'd start off by looking at my metrics. It was a bit obsessive. But maybe you've dropped HRV, right?
Yeah.
We spoke about that before. Probably one of the biggest indicators of your mental state.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Can you explain that, share a bit more detail about it?
Sure. So HRV stands for heart rate variability, and it's the difference between your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight, flight, and freeze system, and then your rest and digest and relax system, which is called your parasympathetic system. And you get a measurement on that. And so a lot of the cheaper wearables might just give you a stress score. We want to see an actual heart rate variability score. So I know Apple and Whoop do that and Aura do that, so you can actually see the measurement on that. It gives you an understanding of what we call vagal tone. So the higher your heart rate variability is, generally the better. The lower is, the more you're in the stressed fight, flight state. And so it is very individual. We looked at your individuality being a lot higher than the average person. And so we do diagnostic tests. So we put someone in a stressful environment, work-wise, put them in a holiday environment and see what the top end is and what the bottom end is and say, look, if you're under this chronic distress, you're going to have problems long term. And that's why the research says, like most chronic disease, is the etiology or the cause of it is 80% stress related. So we need to measure that, and then we need to change that. And my clients really like the fact that, okay, I've got a heart rate variability, like I can get a stress score right now from Whoop. I can do a breathwork technique, and then I can remeasure. Straight away, I can see the changes. Or I can do a mindfulness exercise and see the changes. Or I can use something like BrainTap, which we'll look at, or Apollo, one of these devices, and I can see the changes. So sometimes for people, the measurement is really helpful. Now, that's not everything, because subjective scores are important, and those subjective sort of ratings are important, but it may just rather we've gone on a very data-centric. We want it objective, and even the corporates that have come to us saying, we don't share any of the individual data points because that's confidential, but we can see where the team is on a distress level. Okay, because stress is actually neutral. It's actually good for us in many ways, and it can be detrimental in many ways. Yeah. So we talk about distress to say, this team here, if we look at the numbers, they're in a distressed state. They're in a very stressed state, for want of a better word, layman's term. And if they carry on like this, disease is going to happen, or cognitive performance is not going to be where it needs to be.
You're unable to perform, right? And it goes back to your point about being predictive, right? You're not just waiting for the consequence, i.e. someone's got sick or they're burnt out or they're not delivering. You're preempting those issues and hopefully course correcting.
Absolutely. And it's no wonder like LeBron James and the Rory McIlroys and the JT Thomases, even Ronaldo now wearing the Whoop. Why? Because we want to get a recovery score. You want to see where your stress is at. And maybe after a while, like you learned a lot, and you're not wearing it as much now because you've got good body awareness, and you realize, this is not good, alcohol's not good, or eating late's not good, or red meat's not good, or this works for me, this doesn't. It's always good to really look at those things because our bodies change, and we age, and you have kids, and you don't have much sleep, and things change.
Yeah,
and that's when people miss it. And I say to people, do you wait for your car to break down on the side of the road, or do you service it before it breaks down? You would never think about just, okay, I'm going to wait for it to break down and then I'm going to go to the doctor or the mechanic in this point here. But we do that with our health. We wait until we get sick and then we go to the doctor. And that's what we call a sick care model. And it's brilliant at doing it. It'll save your life. Make no mistake. And if people are listening out there, I'm grateful for doctors and hospitals and that. But it's not the long-term way of staying healthy. That's a healthcare model.
Yeah.
And I can only see the way is know thyself. Socrates said, know thyself. And one of the easiest ways is to look at the data.
Yeah. And I think we should think about hospitals and doctors as a catch-all, right? It shouldn't be our first port of call, right? What can we do as an individual to reduce the likelihood of needing that service? Obviously, we need it, right? But we want to reduce the likelihood of needing it.
Correct.
You touched on 2 devices to help with sleep. Do you mind sharing a bit more about that?
Sure. These are our top 2 devices. And this one's a BrainTap. You don't need to get the visor, but it's an app, all right? And it's got 1,800 audio tracks. And The research founded by Dr. Patrick Porter, and the research has shown that it changes your brain state.
Okay.
So
you sleep with that?
No. You use it. It tracks like 8 minutes, 16 minutes, 20 minutes. You can use it once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day. And you put it on like this, and then there's lights that go in the front here where you see those circles.
Okay.
And there's lights that go in your ears. And then you put it on like this, and then in this place over here, and you listen to this audio track. And the brilliant part of this is it's a passive way to change your brain state. So you get into a deep meditative state.
So like how is reaching that moment of mindfulness in it?
Correct. So you're going from high beta where we're at now, and you're going to go to alpha, and you can go between alpha and theta. And in those brainwave states, that's the meditative state where you're going to get regeneration and rejuvenation, and you're going to calm the system down, and you're going to be in that creative state. The brilliance about this is that it's passive. Because when we go to corporates and we go to clients and we say, how many of you have sustained your meditative practice, like a meditation? We get a response of like 5%, because it takes work.
Yeah.
So we really want to make it an easier way to actually...
It does the hard work for you.
It does the hard work for you, and it's passive, and it changes your brain state.
Okay.
And so
Amazing.
This has been good for distress, want a better word, stress, anxiety, panic, sleep. There's data. It's been verified independently in the States. And what I love about America is like they're very data oriented.
Yeah.
And so the claims they make have been proven. So that's Brain Tap. You don't actually even need the visor. You can just use the app and the audio tracks. Many people do, and they carry on like that.
Just put on your own
Put it on, and you can put on your own mask and listen. And it's our best like feedback we get from changing brain states and dealing with distress.
And that has a long-term impact on...
Long-term impact.
Okay, improving HRV, improving sleep quality,
and you can do it just before you go to bed as well.
Okay.
So it's a really, really powerful product.
Okay, amazing. Yeah. And I think you mentioned the Apollo.
Yeah, the Apollo, developed by Dr. David Rabin. He's a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist, inventor, and this is a strap. My demo's out now, but you strap it either on your wrist or you strap it on your leg, and it uses vibrational technology at a certain frequency. It's got a brilliant app. It's got 7 different modes. And so from calm to sleep to being social to being focused to energy to recover from a training session.
Interesting.
And so also a lot of research. I interviewed Dr. David Rabin. I also interviewed Dr. Patrick Porter on my podcast, because everything that we want to do within our space, we really want to make it science-backed, and we want to make it research and data-proven. So that's the way we've gone. And I'm not saying that's the only thing that's going to help you. I mean, TCM's been around for a long time. There's been a lot of breath work that's been around for a long time, and mindfulness has been around there. And that's great, and there's a lot of research. But we're using the data that has double-blinded studies that have been shown to improve your nervous system.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
So maybe, I guess, moving on from sleep, I think another big element of life and a lot of the research, I think, is around your nutrition.
Yeah.
And what are you eating?
Yeah.
Is that an aspect that you cover with clients? Is it a similar process? What does it look like?
Sure. We do the auditing. So we do like a food intolerance test for some people. A lot of the numbers tell us with regards to if someone, like I don't like ascribe to any diet. I don't tell a vegan that they have to become carnivore, or carnivore has to become keto. I'm not into the diet wars at all. But what I am is looking at the data saying, hang on, your diet is not producing or providing the nutrients that you need, the vitamin D that you need.
So again, it goes back to the data, right?
It goes back to the data.
Okay.
So hang on, you're eating like this, but what's your fasting insulin? What's your HbA1c? What's your ferritin like? We see a lot of vegans that have very low ferritin, iron storages. We have carnivores that got way too high ferritin that causes oxidative stress. And so how does your body and your genetics and your epigenetics process that food? Is fasting good for you? For some females, fasting's not good. For many males, fasting's incredible. So it's to work with the individual, to guide them along, give them like some of the assessments, and then take them along a journey. And that's where the human capital part comes. So I spoke about a data-centric model. Like data without interpretation or without action, I think is almost useless. It's not totally, because you're aware now. And awareness is the start of transformation and change. Because if you're not aware, how can you make the changes? So, but we want someone to analyze that, to walk with you. And that's why we put health coaches with all our corporates, all our executives. I walk a journey, my health coaches walk a journey with you to say, oh, your temperature's up now. Oh, your heart rate variability's dropped. oh, in 3 days' time, you're going to get COVID symptoms. And this was incredible in COVID because the people that had done the data-centric model, we picked up they were going to have COVID 3 days before they showed symptoms.
Sure.
Came into my clinic, we did IV drips, we used hydrogen peroxide, we did a whole bunch of things. And all of a sudden, they did so much better than the people that didn't do that with the COVID outcomes. So, I mean, that's been shown already. Over millions of users tapped in with their data to show what happens with COVID, what happens to temperature, what happens to heart rate variability. So it was a powerful study.
Sure. Amazing. So again, I think it comes down to understanding the baseline, right? And then using that to determine a personalized path that an individual should follow. I know one of the third pillar when people often speak to, and I'm sure there's more, but is exercise, right? And lifestyle. So, I mean, again, corporates are busy.
Yeah.
Maybe people are not as fit as they used to. How do you work with someone to kind of improve? I mean, steps is maybe a good example, but how do you look at that when it comes to working with your clients, and what can people do back home?
Yeah, look, and I mean, I think we could have like 10 podcasts, just on that. But in terms of like exercise, we speak more about movement. So if you just look at it, sexual wisdom, moving as much as you can and getting those baseline steps.
So like sitting at your desk, basically.
Correct. Yeah, really trying to get like the minimum 8,000 steps,
Okay, so is that the number?
That's the minimum, based on the research. If you get to 10 or 12, it's great. But a minimum 8,000 steps, is very, very important. And then looking at the different zones. So there's a lot of research on different, like zone 1 from a cardiovascular perspective and a cardiorespiratory perspective, zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And trying to get in at least 180 to 220 minutes of zone 2. And then so we teach people, what is zone 2? Why is it so important? This aerobic cardiovascular, zone. And then zone 5, getting at least one session of zone 5 a week. And the research.
So what's one session? I mean,
at least 16 minutes of zone 5.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So it's 4 minutes as hard as you can.
Okay.
And then 4 minutes rest and 4 minutes as hard as you can. So 16 minutes of zone 5. And VO2 max being a very, very important data point with zone 5 with regards to health and wellness. And then zone 2 also having its benefit. And then the strength and flexibility. So muscles and longevity organs. So we look at that. We do body composition with some of our corporates as well, saying what's their percentage fat, how much lean muscle mass have they got. We know that as you get older.
Very data-driven, right?
Data-driven. If you don't have muscle, you're going to have problems as you get older. And so we look at that as well. So exercise is huge. Movement is huge. Strength is huge. Cardiorespiratory is huge. But once we make it bespoke, because I don't want someone listening out there online and saying, this is overwhelming, like nutrition, sleep, stress, wearables. It's like over 3 months, we can change 2 data points that can change your life. Okay.
And it's baby steps to get there, right?
Baby steps. So I'll give an example. It took me the longest time that a corporate came to me and saying, listen, I cannot think, I've got brain fog. We looked, he was getting 2 minutes of REM sleep. It took us 7 years. Okay. And after 7 years, we got his REM sleep to 1.5 hours to 2 hours.
Wow. Okay.
He was a different individual. But it took small, consistent steps over time. So we're not going to change you dramatically and say no to alcohol, because as soon as I say no to a lot of people, they run a mile. But it's these incremental changes that can really move the needle significantly.
I think that's the right way to think about it, right? And you've got to think about it as a process, right? It's not overnight, and it's about that consistency and making incremental progress. And if you look at the numbers, just look at the maths, small incremental progress over an extended period of time has a huge impact.
Yeah.
And that's what people need to focus on. I think just a topic which we can't conclude without speaking about is heat and cold exposure.
Sure.
Because everyone, all of a sudden talking about things like ice baths and saunas, and they're very much kind of in the mix at the moment. So quickly, what is your view on those? What are the benefits?
Let me give you a macro view. The heat and the cold is what we call hormetic stress. So what is hormetic stress? It's what little bit of stress, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So a little bit of stress can strengthen you. So that's heat, that's cold, that's exercise, that's fasting. So it causes a little bit of stress in your body, and you then adapt to that. The problem we're having in just modernity is people are under so much distress that a lot of these things can be unhelpful. And so they want to jump into a cold bath, but they don't know their vitamin D. All right. Now, is cold very, very important? Absolutely. There's a lot of research on it in terms of these like cold shock proteins and what happens to your body and the response to that. But we need to have a hierarchy of what's going to move the needle the most. And that's my concern. I love infrared sauna. I'm in there 6 days a week. But I can tell you my labs in that for the last 17 years. And so you don't go and try and do matric calculus before you've done like addition in grade 1. And so do I believe in infrared sauna? Absolutely. Do I believe in getting the sun without burning? Absolutely. Is cold therapy and cryotherapy really important? But guys want to like do that without doing the basics. And that's the problem that I have with a lot of these biohacks. They're brilliant, but you're like trying to ice the cake, and your foundation is like really...
It's like a shortcut with that kind of...
Correct, and that's where medical doctors say, like, you're doing all this stuff, but you don't know the basics of what's happening like with your liver enzymes, you know? So I think there's a place for biohacking and all the tools, and we love the tools and that, but it must be put in a very, very analytical, process-driven, journey-driven, goal-driven, journey, for want of a better word, I mean, everybody wants performance, and we do these cognoscopies and cognitive performance tests, but performance sits on the bedrock of health. You will not be able to perform long-term unless you've got significant health foundation. And I tell that to people, performance is your number one asset. Whether you're performing for your wife, for yourself, for work, without performance, it's not going to go well for you in this world, and you need to be able to perform. But you need to perform out of a very healthy mind, body, and spirit. And people aren't in that place. So they're cracking the whip, and they're breaking down because their health foundation is not good. And the corporates have really liked our data to say, listen, if you carry on pushing this team, they're going to break. And that's why they needed so much long leave. And that's why they're so sick. And that's why they can't cope with the task. And so we've given them some hard data to think about. Some of them have made some adjustments. Some of them haven't. Others have realized, hang on, if I don't change, I'm going to get another diagnosis. So it's really to empower people with the data and to beat chronic disease and help people perform is crucially our mandate and our mission at Made to Thrive.
Yeah, well, it's a great mission.
Yeah.
And it's about doing so in a sustainable way as well, right? It's not like you're trying to do this for a quick overnight win. It's about that sustainability, that consistency for, consistent change or impactful change that's going to last, right? You don't want to make progress and then undo it a week later, right?
Sure. And I mean, I'm like a wounded tiger. And I'll give you the story. Like in 2023, I've never needed to see my psychologist as much as I did because I'm really struggling with young people, with teenage, like possible suicide, cancers at young ages. If I have to look at another patient who's like cardiovascular patient who's had a heart attack in their 30s, and patients over the last 25 years have become friends.
Yeah.
And I'm dealing with secondary trauma and compassion fatigue. Yeah. Why? Because these people, unfortunately, they're just so unaware. They're living in modernity, and they're getting these diagnoses, and they're just not getting out of it.
Yeah.
And they think Western medicine is going to give them a pill that's going to fix everything. It's not. There's only one person that needs to take accountability of your health, and that's you. And if you don't realize that it's going to take work, you're going to just fall prey to, unfortunately, a society that doesn't have your best interest at heart. Unfortunately, big business and big food and big telecoms and big pharma that don't have your best interest at heart. There's brilliance in them, but unfortunately, it is a lot about shareholders.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think super, super valuable. If we sum up, I mean, there's been a lot, and I think we probably could have multiple episodes here to unpack everything, but I think, what are the themes? The themes are around measurability, right? Yeah. Using data, understanding your own body, what works for you. Well, firstly, where you're at, right? And then what works for you, and what is that personalized intervention that will help you thrive, like, which is ultimately what you're about. And that applies to, what you put in your body. It applies to how you sleep. It applies to what you do. But start with the data, make a small step, and focus on consistent change. And if you need some help, Steve and the Thrive team are there for you. So
yeah, and I think that's important. And I don't want people to think, because they might think they're alone. They're not alone.
Yeah.
There's someone who's a health coach. He's not expensive like a specialist physician. People go, our physicians are brilliant. Our specialists are brilliant. But you see them every 3 months. So here's a coach that you can see once a week who can help you, direct you, facilitate change, be there for you, because I don't want people to ever think they're alone. And this is like a confidential relationship that people can really foster. And the coaches have like transformed a lot of people's lives, you know, and you need someone. You can't do it alone.
Yeah.
If you think you can do it alone,
You
well,
need
then-
that accountability, right? Yeah.
the
You need a
best
subject
performers.
matter expert.
Yeah, I have coaches.
Yeah.
So, like, why would you think that you don't need a coach? You need a coach.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Ronaldo needs a coach. Federer needed a coach. These guys needed coaches to help them along their journeys.
Yeah.
Everybody does. And it's affordable and it's practical and it's, like, easily
Yeah.
attainable.
And I think that's a great point to end on, just the fact that it's now accessible, right? We've got these modern, you know, really miracles, right? And modern technology that you showed us today, and, you know, medicine and science has come a long way. And now it's not something that only is there for Federer or Ronaldo, it's for everyone. So thanks so much. Really
Brilliant.
loved the
Thanks so much.
conversation.